Nestled atop a mist-shrouded hill, the old Hawthorne Manor was the sort of place that begged for whispered rumors and half-baked legends. A winding driveway, overgrown with weeds, crept up to the once grand entrance, flanked by gargoyles sporting chipped features and perpetually disappointed gazes. If you were brave or foolish enough to visit at twilight, you might have felt the centuries-old porch creak beneath your feet before the massive oak door threatened to swing open on its own. Many folks in the nearby town swore up and down that eerie lights flickered in the windows or that strange sounds echoed from the attic. And mostly, they were right. Inside the manor, the atmosphere was thick with the memory of opulent parties long since ended. Even in disrepair, one can imagine the swirl of ball gowns in the dusty halls, or hear the faint echo of string quartets from dim corners. Ornate mirrors, their surfaces dulled by a century's worth of grime, clung to cracked walls in vain attempts to reflect a long-lost splendor. Whispers of laughter, or perhaps just the draft, would bounce along the corridors at all hours like ghostly gossip. Of the many rumors about the manor, one was undeniably true. It was haunted. Two mischievous spirits called it home. While other ghosts across the globe pursued solemn haunting or menacing wails, this duo, Milton and Delilah, preferred a distinctly prankish fare. They had become so skilled in their trickery over the decades that the townspeople's stories could never quite capture the full mischief these two unleashed behind those rotting walls. Harmless though they were, each new scheme brought giggles, or their ghostly equivalent, to the two pranksters. Their pranks were always aimed at the unsuspecting, the curious, or the occasionally foolhardy caretaker. And tonight, they were busy getting ready for a brand new round of spectral shenanigans. Milton perched on a crooked rocking chair in the parlor. His translucent form shimmered faintly in the moonlight, streaming through a broken window. Though he no longer needed to breathe, some habit stayed with him from his living days. He ran a ghostly hand through his wispy hair as if to calm any anxious excitement. He wore what might have once been formal evening attire, a tailcoat and bow tie, though now ethereal and somewhat threadbare, matching the rest of his faintly glowing appearance. Across from him, Delilah floated lazily, her equally translucent figure dressed in a tattered but elegantly cut gown that gave her the look of a stage performer whose final curtain call had long since passed. If it were possible for ghosts to grin from ear to ear, they both exemplified it. "I can't believe the caretaker is going to be back for another inspection tomorrow," Milton said, his voice a soft echo. "I thought he'd had enough after the last time we replaced his mop with that big squeaking stuffed parrot," Delilah giggled. "Oh, I know, he ran out screaming about a possessed mop all the way down the driveway, but apparently the estate owners want to sell this place. Or maybe rent it out? Either way, they keep sending him here. Poor chap has to come back whether he likes it or not." Floating over to the dusky fireplace, she inspected their arsenal of prank accessories. Of course, these items weren't strictly physical in the usual sense. They were ghostly contraptions that Milton and Delilah had collected or conjured to enhance their pranks. Among the favorites were a set of glowing footprints they could stamp on floors and walls, a squealing door hinge that made an ominous moaning sound, and a set of rattling chains purely for dramatic effect. She fingered the chain links lovingly. "I think we should go with the old classic chain rattle tonight. Nothing spells haunted house like a good clank of metal in the dead of night." "Chain rattling is always a delight," Milton agreed, folding his arms. "But we need something fresh. Maybe incorporate some new trick into the caretaker's next freakout." Delilah floated in a thoughtful circle, her gown trailing like a wisp of fog behind her. "We haven't messed with the mirrors in a while. Last time he came, he never saw the message we scrawled in the dust because we spelled go away backward. He just thought it was dirt smudges." She wrinkled her transparent nose. "I was so disappointed I didn't get to see him exaggerated into some horrific ghostly threat." "Right," Milton mused. "Let's step it up, something big but still good-hearted, and maybe this time let's try to be a bit more friendly in our message. We can't chase everyone out if we want new souls to prank." Delilah clapped her hands together, her eyes shining. "Friendly? How about leaving a ghostly welcome message, something that makes him jump, then realize we're only playing pranks? Maybe a phrase like, 'Hello from the spooks,' or 'We see you, having fun?' Something that doesn't make him run for dear life immediately. Milton nodded, pacing in midair as if walking a ghostly treadmill. Yes, that's good. We'll make it clear we're harmless. But we sure won't let him off too easily. We should have some real shockers first. A slow-building sequence of spooks culminating in the message on the mirror that says, "Just messing with you. Have a nice day." We'll see how long it takes for him to notice. A rumbling wind rattled the mutilated shutters, and Milton and Delilah's excitement heightened. With a plan in mind and hours to spare before midnight, they roamed the corridors, preparing for the caretaker's arrival. They double-checked the squeaky floorboards, rigged windows with gentle tapping noises, and found an especially nice place in the hallway to position their glowing footprints. The mansion felt alive, or unliving to be precise, with anticipation. The caretaker, Mr. Harold Braithwaite, was a lanky fellow with a perpetually nervous disposition. Some said he had more of a claim to the title professional worrier than caretaker of an old mansion, but a job was a job and he wasn't one to shirk his duties, even if those duties involved dust-laden halls and a rumored haunted presence. Tall and angular, with a face that seemed perpetually on the verge of an apologetic smile, Harold was under strict orders to ensure the property remained in decent shape until it could be sold. Just as Delilah and Milton predicted, Harold arrived with little enthusiasm. His battered sedan groaned up the driveway, headlights illuminating the gargoyle statues in a way that made them look extra menacing. Practically tiptoeing, he made his way up the steps with a battered toolkit in hand. He cleared his throat and tried to hum a tiny tune as he inserted the key into the old door. It took a bit of jiggling. Hawthorne Manor's locks were stubborn with the living. The door finally gave way, creaking open slowly. Harold set his toolkit on a small table in the foyer and flicked on his flashlight. He froze. Immediately, the beam landed upon a small set of ghostly footprints glowing on the dusty floor, bright green and leading up the staircase. With a little gasp, Harold rubbed his eyes, but sure enough, the footprints remained. "What on earth?" he whispered, shining the flashlight on them more intently. Seeing no immediate explanation, he gulped, then carefully stepped around the glowing prints, determined to get his chores done. Could just be some fancy glow-in-the-dark paint, he told himself aloud, though his voice trembled slightly. Hovering above, Milton and Delilah exchanged invisible high fives and drifted silently toward the next designated prank point. They had arranged a small vase to tip over at just the right moment near the parlor door. Unaware of the ghostly watchers, Harold made his way around the entry hall, checking the walls for cracks and scribbling notes on a clipboard. His flashlight jumped about nervously on the peeling wallpaper. He stopped in the drawing room to check the broken chandelier, shining his light up into the crystals. "Still looks awful," he murmured. "I imagine no one will want to buy this place in its state. Maybe I can convince the owners to install some modern lighting." Crash! The vase in the next room abruptly hit the ground. Harold yelped and practically tossed his clipboard in the air. Spinning around, he stared into the parlor. The flashlight revealed shards of pottery strewn across the worn carpet. His heart thudded. He'd set that vase on a sturdy table last time he visited. It hadn't even been near the edge. Carefully, he crept forward, shining the light's beam over the scene. No sign of a culprit. The windows were sealed and no breeze stirred. From their vantage point, near the coffered ceiling, Milton and Delilah muffled delighted giggles. This was the part they enjoyed most, watching the caretaker's eyebrows shoot toward his hairline. "Must have been loose from the wall vibrations," Harold muttered weakly, though deep down he knew it made little sense. He proceeded, with shaking hands, to gather the broken pieces into a little pile on the table. "Guess I'll clean this up. Terrific." Satisfied with the caretaker's bewilderment, Milton nodded at Delilah. Together, they glided into the next corridor. Time for the wind whoosh effect. Harold soon entered the hallway. The manor's floorboards groaned beneath him like an old pirate ship. A chill gust of wind, conjured by Delilah's intangible presence, rushed past him and extinguished his flashlight with a sudden, strong blow. Darkness swallowed him. Harold shouted in surprise, fumbling with the flashlight's switch. It flickered back on, revealing a disturbingly quiet corridor. Panicked, he squeaked, "Hello?" But of course, there was no answer. Mustering his courage, he pressed on, determined to finish his tasks as quickly as possible. At the far end of the hall loomed an aged mirror, its ornate frame tarnished but still imposing. Harold noticed a slight shimmer on the looking glass, hinting at letters drawn in the dust. Though half terrified, curiosity won out. Moving closer, he realized it read, "Hello, caretaker." The words were scrawled in ghostly, swirling letters that glowed faintly. He stepped back, nearly tripping over his own feet. "Okay," he whispered, "someone is messing with me." Yet he couldn't quite believe a prankster from town would go to such lengths, not in a house so thoroughly rumored to be haunted. His breath grew shallow. "Steady, Harold. It's gotta have a rational explanation." Meanwhile, Milton prepared the next step. Gentle rattling of chains in the corridor. This was Delilah's specialty. She manifested a small portion of intangible chain from her intangible bag of ghostly tricks. The sound started softly, like a distant clink from somewhere in the depths of the mansion. It gradually grew louder, reverberating off the walls with a sinister rhythm. As the caretaker reached the corridor's midpoint, the chain rattling crescendoed, echoing from all directions. He spun in circles, flashlight swinging wildly. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice quavering. The chain rattling continued, then stopped abruptly. Silence reigned. Harold felt his pulse hammer in his chest. Delilah, spotting the caretaker's frantic expression, decided it was time to lighten the mood just a notch. No sense in completely scaring him away before their final big reveal. She let a gentle glow shimmer at the end of the corridor, almost like a welcoming nightlight. Harold, trembling, moved toward it cautiously. The glow led to a small storage closet, which was typically empty save for dust bunnies. But when he opened the door, he found a bright, childlike drawing of two smiling ghosts pinned to the back wall. The words, "We mean no harm," were written underneath in glowing letters. The caretaker blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. At that moment, thunder boomed outside and a flash of lightning illuminated the windows, as if the night itself wanted a say in the matter. The caretaker let out a shaky sigh, carefully removing the little drawing and putting it in his coat pocket. This was an odd gesture, as if a small piece of him found comfort in the message. He then mustered the last of his courage and decided to do what he had come for, a final sweep of the second floor. Milton and Delilah exchanged a triumphant nod. The caretaker hadn't fled yet, and he seemed intrigued rather than determined to call an exorcist. That meant the grand finale was still on. They drifted up the stairs, taking shortcuts through the old walls and floorboards, while poor Harold took the slow route, spooked by every squeak and shadow. Upstairs was gloomier yet. A single corridor flanked by closed doors led to a large master bedroom at the end. The wallpaper here had long since peeled away, revealing chipped plaster. A cobweb-draped chandelier, much smaller than the one in the drawing room, hung from a cracked ceiling rose. Harold inhaled and stepped carefully, checking each side room. He found only dusty furniture and more scuff marks. But at the master bedroom door he paused. Something beyond the threshold glowed softly, beckoning him in. Milton hovered behind an ancient writing desk in that bedroom, holding a ghostly quill pen. Meanwhile, Delilah took center stage near a full-length mirror, swirling in a ghostly waltz. The plan was to present themselves in a not-too-terrifying manner, playful, a bit dramatic, maybe even silly. Harold's heart skipped when he glimpsed Delilah's ethereal figure dancing in circles. Her gown looked like shifting moonlight. Mustering nerve, he gasped, "Hello?" Delilah froze, turning to face him. She lifted a hand in a friendly gesture. Milton, determined to make a suitably theatrical entrance, dropped the quill pen onto the desk and stepped into view. Both ghosts glowed faintly in the dimness. They resembled stage performers paused in the middle of a silent opera. The caretaker's eyes widened to saucers. I'm seeing specters," he stuttered, voice trembling. You're not illusions, are you?" Milton bowed politely, a ghostly grin upon his translucent face. "We're quite real, but we swear we're harmless," he said, voice echoing in the hush. "Apologies if we frightened you too much. We just like a bit of fun." Delilah floated over, her expression warm. "We're not here to chase you away," she reassured. "We come in peace, as the phrase goes. It's just, well, we've been here for decades and we have to amuse ourselves somehow." Harold swallowed hard. He glanced at the door, still within reach for a mad dash, but something about the ghost's demeanor felt strangely comforting. "So all the pranks, the footprints, the rattling chains, the broken vase, that was you two?" Delilah nodded sheepishly. "Yes, we do get carried away, but we also wanted a chance to finally say hello. We're tired of the old routine of scaring folks off." Harold stood in stunned silence, hardly believing his own eyes and ears. Then, in a moment of bewildered politeness, he offered a slight bow. I'm Harold Braithwaite, caretaker of Hawthorne Manor." "Well, I suppose you know that already." Milton floated closer, extending a faintly glowing hand. Ghostly contact felt like a cool gust of air laced with static electricity. It made his arm hairs stand on end. He shivered, but discovered it wasn't unpleasant. "Charmed," he whispered. A pause followed, an awkward stillness as caretaker and ghost sized each other up. The battered bedroom around them seemed to hold its breath, as if it too was waiting for the next move. Finally, Harold managed a shaky laugh. "So, you've been having fun at my expense, haven't you?" "Oh, yes, we have," Delilah admitted with a wry grin, cheeks glowing. "Though in fairness, we've tested these pranks on quite a few caretakers through the years. You're the first that stuck around long enough for a conversation." "I suppose that's something," Harold replied, uncertain whether to feel proud or humiliated by the notion of being singled out. Milton winked, drifting toward the door. "You seem like a good sport. If it's not too much trouble, might we talk with you about the place? It's been ages since we've had a visitor we didn't send running and screaming." Though his knees wobbled, Harold nodded. "I guess so. You're not going to fling me out of a window, right?" Delilah burst into laughter. "Certainly not. We only pull pranks, nothing malicious." Relieved, Harold sank onto a dusty armchair. Milton and Delilah glanced at each other, conjuring from memory the social graces they used to know in life. Delilah perched on an old ottoman, spectral attire swirling around her. Milton hovered midair, clasping his hands behind his back in a gentlemanly pose. In the quiet dimness, Harold couldn't help but notice the flickering aura around the ghosts, lighting the gloom in a faint silver blue. A dusty breeze drifted in from the cracked window. Thunder rumbled outside once again, but it felt oddly distant now that he was engrossed in conversation with two poltergeists. Sensing Harold's curiosity, Delilah gave a small shrug. "We've been here, oh, maybe 100 years. Time is odd for ghosts, but it's been decades upon decades, that much is certain. This manor used to be a hub for lively parties, fancy guests, lavish banquets, waltzing in the ballroom. That's how I remember it." Milton nodded. "I used to love those gatherings, the music, the laughter, but when the owners passed away, the parties stopped. The house fell into disrepair. And well, we stuck around. Year after year, caretaker after caretaker, no one wanted to stay for long, so we made a game of it. We tested them with pranks, but eventually it just turned into a hobby we couldn't quit. It's lonely being ghosts." Harold's sympathetic gaze shifted from one ghost to the other. "Not that I can claim to know what it's like, but that sounds rough, stir-crazy in a way." A spectral sigh escaped Delilah. "We go through cycles. The pranks are fun, but we do crave real conversation from time to time." "Indeed," Milton agreed. "Even I, known for my comedic flair, tire of scaring folks eventually." He paused, glancing around the tattered room as if remembering how it looked a century ago. "Sometimes I imagine everything back to its former glory, music playing, couples dancing. But illusions can only distract us so long." Harold shifted in the chair. Part of him still felt a twitch of apprehension just sitting across from two ghosts, but another part felt an odd camaraderie. They were more or less stuck here, just as he was stuck with the job. Perhaps they had more in common than he ever would have guessed. For a moment, the caretaker lapsed into a thoughtful silence. Then he asked, "What if the house does sell? If new owners come in and tear things apart or renovate drastically, what happens to you then?" Delilah and Milton exchanged uneasy looks. The question hung like a chandelier about to fall. Milton cleared his throat. We're not sure, honestly. If they tear it down, we might be set loose or forced to roam the grounds. Or maybe we'll just vanish. None of us truly knows. Most ghosts prefer not to think about it. The windows rattled softly. Harold exhaled. I see. Well, if you could get along with new owners, you might get to stick around. Although I can't imagine a typical family wanting to share a home with two mischievous spirits. Delilah brightened unexpectedly, floating to her feet. But that's just it. Maybe we could show them we're not so scary. They might come to like having a few helpful house ghosts. We know every nook and cranny, after all. Milton spread his arms. We could fetch items, keep watch at night, and greet visitors with a humorous chain rattle. Although, maybe dial the chain rattling back a notch. Or keep it strictly for special occasions. Halloween parties, perhaps. Harold startled himself by laughing. Actually, that might be a selling point. Turning the place into a haunted B&B, an attraction or something. Modern folks can be intrigued by that kind of novelty. If it's safe. A flash of lightning lit up the bedroom once more, revealing in stark contrast the caretaker and the two ghosts deep in conversation. Then thunder rolled, softer this time, as if echoing in gentle acknowledgement of a budding idea. For the first time since he entered the house that night, Harold felt a glimmer of hope. Granted, it was an odd scenario, brainstorming marketing angles with supernatural roommates, but the potential was there. He recognized a chance to help them out and maybe help himself, too. If the house was sold as a tourist-friendly haunted manor, the new owners might invest in proper renovations. Harold could keep his caretaker position or perhaps become the manager of something more exciting than a rotting old building, and the two ghosts would have new opportunities for socializing beyond just scaring away unsuspecting visitors. They might even let you host events again, Harold mused aloud. Halloween balls, costume parties, maybe ghost tours. You two could be stars of the show, but you'll need to keep the pranks relatively gentle. Gentle pranks are our specialty, Delilah chimed. Well, our attempts at them anyway. We'll do our best. We'd rather see people smile than run off shrieking. She glided over to the window and peered out at the storm. I imagine folks would line up to see a real haunted mansion with friendly ghosts, Milton nodded fervently. And if any guests get unruly, well, we can always send them packing with some harmless illusions. That might even add to the appeal. Harold laughed sheepishly. Yes, I can see it now. Spend a night at Hawthorne Manor, home to the friendliest ghosts you'll ever meet, plus a few surprises. You'd have tourists flocking in droves. The conversation flowed on, weaving between delightful possibilities for the manor's future. The caretaker soon realized he'd spent quite a while speaking with Milton and Delilah, and the once terrifying presence felt almost natural. He rose to his feet, brushing dust off his coat. I have to finish my inspection, but I'll talk to the estate owners. I'll tell them about the unique features of the place. Maybe we can pitch a haunted attraction idea. I won't reveal you two specifically, just that this place has friendly spiritual phenomena. You think that'll be all right? Delilah clapped her hands in excitement. Yes, that sounds marvelous. We can't wait to see how they react. Milton extended a hand once more solid this time, as if he was capable of mustering extra energy for a handshake that felt marginally real. Harold accepted, feeling that gentle static flow over his palm. Thank you, Mr. Braithwaite, Milton said quietly. You've given us a lot to look forward to. With a small smile, Harold nodded. And you've given me the strangest evening I've ever had, but also one of the most intriguing. I appreciate that you didn't, drop a chandelier on me or anything. Delilah snickered. We considered it, but decided it might ruin your outlook on ghosts altogether. She winked. Harold shook his head, part disbelief, part amusement. Well, I suppose I'll get on with... Before he could finish, the chandelier above them let out a tiny squeak of protest, almost as if triggered by the mention of dropping. All three looked up. With a swift exchange of alarmed glances, the two ghosts hurriedly glided upward, their luminous hands pressing against the chain of the old fixture as though to keep it in place. It groaned once, then fell silent. Satisfied that it wasn't going to fall on the caretaker's head, Delilah suppressed a relieved grin. Sorry about that. Might need some careful maintenance. Harold gulped, brushing imaginary dust off his shoulders. I'll be sure to make note of that. He fumbled for his clipboard, still lying on the floor from a previous fright. Then, with a final respectful nod to the spectral duo, he quietly made his exit from the master bedroom and headed down the stairs. Outside, the storm was easing up. Lightning crackled farther away now, and the rain had slowed to a steady patter on the overgrown hedges. Harold tossed his toolkit and clipboard into his car. He stood at the threshold of the mansion for a moment, glancing back into the foyer. A whisper of movement caught his eye, and there were Milton and Delilah, floating near the entrance, waving cordial goodbyes like actors at the end of a performance. He gave them a small wave in return. Then, with a final creak, the wind pulled the oak door shut. As Harold navigated his car down the serpentine driveway, he felt oddly energized. Yes, it was weird frightening, even, but those ghosts had hearts, or the ghostly equivalent, in the right place. Perhaps with the right pitch and a little imagination, Hawthorne Manor's haunted reputation could become a true selling point instead of a deterrent. Back inside, Milton and Delilah lingered in the foyer after Harold's departure. Their excitement hung in the air, a new sense of purpose, a glimmer of hope. Delilah turned to her ghostly companion with an impish smile. We might be in for a grand new chapter, Milton. Imagine it. People arriving to see us, wanting to dance with ghosts instead of running from them. Indeed. And best of all, it'll give us a reason to be on our best behavior. After a moment's pause, he chuckled. Though of course we can still slip in a few fun pranks, all in good humor. Delilah pretended to flick dust from her ethereal gown. It wouldn't be Hawthorne Manor without a few floating teacups or harmless jump scares after all. Their laughter echoed through the corridors, merging with the final rolls of thunder. Shadows danced across the ancient walls as they drifted upstairs, happily planning the polished illusions they'd create for future visitors. No more lonely nights scaring away unsuspecting caretakers. Instead, they imagined costume parties, candlelit tours, and fresh faces whose shrieks would soon transform into laughter once they realized that the ghosts of Hawthorne Manor were only in it for the harmless fun and the sheer joy of shared excitement. So ended another night of pranks in that worn-down mansion on the hill. But for Milton and Delilah, it was also the start of something new and exciting. A chance to open the doors to guests who would appreciate both the grandeur of the old place and the playful spirit or two that resided within. And as the clouds drifted past the moon, the only lingering echo in the manor was the faint sound of distant giggling, an eternal invitation that said, "Welcome, and prepare to be delightfully spooked."